Good morning, everyone. I hope and trust everyone had a great Thursday, great holiday with time with your family. Uh, it is Saturday morning, a little after 10 a.m., so we'll go ahead and get started. And we will start our day with questions or comments. Uh, See where we are, okay? So, questions, anyone? No one has a question. I have something I'll lead off with that I thought was, I think that is interesting. Uh, I try to look at things and see what news, as a lot of us do, the newsworthy thing, and a lot of things happen that we are accustomed to, the things that are the violence and the shootings and whatnot. But I saw something else that I thought was interesting. I've been noticing uh, that scientists are and people are beginning to find uh, animals in the earth that they thought were long been extinct. There are not just in certain parts of the globe, but all over the earth. They're finding animals that had originally thought to be gone. I mean, they found reindeer in Scotland that haven't been seen in centuries. They and talking about animals from insects, excuse me, from insects to different fish. They found a rare shark in the greatest depth of the ocean. They didn't think but macroorganisms live down there. And here's this shark that's down there. They thought was long since extinct. But we're talking about everything from to insects to fowl to you name it. They found what was it? I'm looking at some notes. So they found a type of bison that they had not seen in certain part of the world for over 10,000 years. They found bats in Rwanda that hadn't been seen in 400 years. I mean, just things that are very bizarre that are happening. Uh, and I mentioned this one to Pastor. They found scientists that found two different type of unidentified animals that live in Antarctica under 3,000 feet of ice, where they're thinking there's nothing possibly that could live there. And so now they're working to try to identify them and see what they are. So those are interesting things that I think as the pot is being stirred in the earth from a different place than it has ever been before. We stir up a lot of things happening, and the earth may very well be replenishing itself and restoring itself to its original state. Any questions and or comments on that? Anybody has read any of this information, and what are your thoughts? Okay, it's okay. Well, I just thought that was interesting. Something I thought I would share with you, and we'll go from here. And anything else that grabs your attention?
Good morning, Ron. This is Janice. How are you?
Hey, Janice, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. I'm curious about where you found the information on the animals. I'd love to do some more reading about that. Fascinating.
Yeah, I subscribe to these different news feeds, and
Mm-hmm.
I get stuff from just about everywhere. But I do, but if you Google it, I'm sure a lot of it is still out there.
Okay.
These articles, and I don't have the news feeds pulled up now, but just interesting things like that. I kind of grabs my attention, and at first
Okay.
when I first saw it, it did not. but when I got a second one, it kind of just kind of, kind of piqued my interest in a third one. And then I got interested and I started looking for them and seeing where all this is coming from. I think that is just as interesting as scientists were wondering also where, and this too is happening over the world, they're seeing land that just pops up out of water. Where's this land coming from? And it's not large groups, pieces of land, but they're just seeing spaces of land that wasn't there, that appears out of the water. And yeah, there are practical reasons for that. We can say global warming and this is taking place, and then there has a snowball effect, and it's but it just kind of weird that these things happen in no location that can be explained. Because if you say water is disappearing in this part of the earth or that part of the earth, it would make sense that land will pop up, but it's popping up in places that doesn't seem to fit that geographical location that would make sense. So those kind of things, to me, unexplainable things always grab my attention.
It sounds an awful lot like rebirth, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Yeah. And as I was speaking to somebody the other day, someone said to me at work, I don't remember it being this cold in October and November. And that's the first thought that came to my mind. Maybe this is how it always was. And because of the undiscipline and the rage that is in man, we have influenced the earth in such a way that the seasons are even confusing. And now the earth is going back to where it was originally in the beginning. And we're seeing the four seasons again, like they were intended to be seen or felt. So
it's so encouraging because it's, we hear about extinction and you think like that's it. There's no recovering from that, but that's not necessarily true. And we don't know as much as we may think we know.
Exactly. And I'm like you, my first feeling of it has been positive when I read about these things. It is something positive.
Sounds like
Thank you for sharing that.
Good morning, Ron.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. this is George. Ron, as you were speaking about, just the science, looking at nature and creation, there's another resource that I'd just like to share in terms of what you were speaking about in terms of creation and and the beginning in terms of the earth. It's called Patagonia, and it talks about the life on the edge of the world, where it relates to the bison, that relates to the animal kingdom, the fish, and the whole breakdown in terms of just what's like you say, reoccurring or resurfacing, that always was there and is still there. But if people were interested, or Janice, if you was interested, I think if you look up that Patagonia, they have like 5 episodes, and they did it like all over the universe in terms of just places where the Pangea, where it just talks about the water and the creation and some of the things that you were talking about. So I just wanted to share that, that resource if people were interested. I think it's an excellent, 5 episodes that really talk about creation and nature. So I just wanted to share that information.
Thank you, George. Thank you for sharing that. What's it called one more time?
Patagonia. It's P as in Paul, A as in Apple, T as in Tom, A as in Apple again, Gonia, Gonia. And if you, I think our CNN, showed it, but there's 5 episodes. It talks about the forest, the whole creation, story, in terms of people who are living, in those places with nature, and how the human and the nature are coming back as one to appreciate that harmony and that balance and that unit. So it's called Patagonia. And I think, well, not I think, but CNN came out with that series, and it was very, very interesting in terms of the animal kingdom life and human life. Done again.
I appreciate that, because that even sheds more light on it than because mine was just an observation that these things are happening, but you're saying that people are noticing it and trying to put rhyme and reason to it, and looking at it at a closer level. I like that. Yeah, I like to see that. Like to see that. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have? Yes, sir.
I have a question that was texted me. However, based on pertaining to what you guys are talking about, suppose that's resurrection, or suppose that the earth is beginning to recreate itself, as opposed to still being in mourning, waiting for the redemption of humanity. Suppose that these species that are being found in the ocean and other places that were unknown previously, or the resurrection of those species that they thought were extinct. And all of that is because humanity is being redeemed as we speak. Suppose that's what's happening now. And everything is beginning to return to a state of balance. If that's the case, then what is the origin of that? At the risk of sounding self-serving in terms of this group on the phone and on Zoom, I believe that this resurrection is taking place because what we do Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, our efforts are geared toward the recreation of earth, or the resurrection of earth itself, while at the same time humanity is being redeemed from those who have guided humanity with a heart that has been hardened for the purpose of redemption. I'm done.
Thank you. Questions or comments, guys? Thank you. Yeah.
Ron.
Yes, ma'am.
I really appreciate what Pastor is saying, because sometimes when we've all been feeling this with the pandemic and being cloistered and whatever, we've all been feeling like it's like the earth or people or whatever, it's going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak. So it's a really good reminder that we look to nature to see what's really happening. Nature gives us signs of what's really happening. So it's really good to hear that, because sometimes it feels like nothing's changing or it's getting worse. So it's a good reminder that we should look to nature to see, the signs. Anyway, thanks.
No, thank you. Appreciate that. You're exactly right. And it is refreshing. It is a reminder to us. And we do forget that. Thank you, everyone. Anyone else? Questions or comments? Okay. You, yes, sir.
We were talking about this idea of the heart for the purpose of redemption. In the period when the heart has been hardened, great trauma, people become exposed to tremendous trauma because of those whose heart has been hardened. Suppose that's what happened in Egypt. And this is the story that tells us a spiritual truth. Being that you in Egypt is more of an allegory. Suppose that's true. That Egypt is actually the crucible, the womb, where the hardship, the struggles are faced. And exiting that womb by way of the Red Sea, which could be indicative of amniotic fluid, and realizing who we are. That came through a spiritual chiseling while in Egypt. And now, all of those circumstances that has kept us blind are being drawn out of us in the wilderness of our lives for the purpose of us being able to know who we are and see with the eye as opposed to eyes. Knowing that the journey to knowing who you are begins with what you can see with your eyes, and it leads to the journey that's spiritual. The knowing who you are with your eyes means to embrace your culture prior to this culture that we had to develop on our own. Your relationships that were taken away from us. Because all of these things are necessary for us on this journey. We must embrace the reality of who we are physically, African, and embrace the reality of our journey physically into slavery before we can actually truly embrace the essence of who we are spiritually. And then, knowing who we are spiritually, we are more able to bring redemption to the earth, because knowing who we are spiritually means that we have a parental obligation over those who has ruled over us with a hardened heart and with while meting out great trauma to those who they have ruled over. That makes sense? Because if that's true, and I do believe it is, then what we are seeing is the reality of balance coming into focus. I'm going to get this other question, and hopefully in a few moments, but I wanted to say that because that's what I see in relation to what we were talking about. Questions or comments, please?
Hey, Pastor, I have something just to go back. I had just gone upstairs, and Joshy woke up, and as I walked in the room, he popped up, and he said, "You'll never guess my dream." And he said, "I dreamt Cayuse," or some word I didn't know, or alive again. I was like, "What are those?" There was some extinct creature in a movie that was alive again now. And it was just like, whoa, because I really wasn't listening to the call in the room. And yet he just popped right up and says that ecstatically. So I thought that was interesting in lieu of what we were talking about with the rebirth or regeneration. And that's all.
I like that, the innocence of a child. You're actually right. He had no idea we were talking about that. And that's what I mean, all the things that happen around us sometimes that seemingly are not connected or we don't pay attention to. They all have meaning and they all fit together to where we are and what we're talking about. Thank you. Any further questions or comments, Pastor? If you wanted, because I want to get back to the heart and of the heart thing, but did you want to go into your question first? You said someone sent you a question. Do you prefer to do that, or before we forget about it? Pastor, are you there?
Yeah. The question is, should we continue to celebrate holidays with racist and oppressive origins when we know that it brings hurt to other communities? This is in reference to our Thanksgiving celebration on the National Day of Mourning for Indigenous People in America. Should we continue to celebrate those holidays is the question.
That's a good question.
Yes, it is indeed. And then there was a screenshot along with that says what Native people got in return for this help was genocide, theft of our land, and never-ending repression.
Good morning. This is Barbara.
Yes,
I had to deal with this with one of my children. My son decided he wasn't coming home this Thanksgiving because he says he didn't want to celebrate this pagan holiday. And I said, well, son, you need to do what you got to do. And I called him back because that didn't sit right with me. And what I said was, son, when have we ever talked to you? When was the last time you spent a holiday here, Thanksgiving, and we talked about the Pilgrims, or we talked about, all of the usual things we associate with the holiday? I said, it's much bigger than that. What we do is we celebrate life, we celebrate family, we celebrate each other. It's an opportunity to reconnect. That even though the holiday came out of some pagan kind of idea, and because of what Pilgrims did, et cetera, because we do have this holiday, it's an opportunity to get together and reaffirm what it is Thanksgiving really is. And it's much bigger than what the Pilgrims did to indigenous people. So that's the way that I dealt with it, as well as other holidays. There are other holidays that have been set aside. And because we get together as family, or we get together as with friends and associates, the motive has to be the thing that we look at, not necessarily what the holiday was set aside for. Because there's a Confederate Memorial holiday in South Carolina as well. So the issue is, do we say, I want to work, or do we repurpose, if you will, what the energy of the holiday by our motives and our actions? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else before I speak to that?
Good morning, everyone. The Thanksgiving holiday really has nothing to do with the Pilgrims and Native Americans. or Pilgrims and Indian. That goes all the way back to November 25th, 1491. And I know I'm gonna butcher his name, but there was a King Farindad, and King Farindad, and if I butchered his name, someone please correct me. He thanked God, or whoever he was thanking. That was a day of thanks for European Christians, for conquering the world and what was done in Granada, Spain. And like I say, if you want to cross-reference me, please do. But all you got to do is put in November 25th, 1491. And I just found out recently, like within maybe last year, Abraham Lincoln made that a holiday for the United States. That Thanksgiving, some people call it Thanksgiving. And whoever the Pope was at that time, he's the one that sanctioned this is a day of European thanks for European Christians. And at that time, Moors who had control of Spain for a good number of years, I mean, they almost 1,000 years, their way of maneuverability was a threat to the European. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? For years, I have spoken to my people about holidays. All sanctioned holidays are holidays that's sanctioned by the government or celebrations that is diametrically opposed to freedom and goodwill. Since we are not the ones who sanction holidays, we are to take advantage of them. And what I've said over the years is the way we take advantage of them is by celebrating family. Barbara covered most of, if not all, of what I said in reference to these sanctioned holidays. Spend time with your family, especially at Christmas. Spend time with your family because it's the only time you are going to have quality time with your family for a few days. You have no control over these holidays because the moment that someone tells you you have to work on that holiday, it's no longer a holiday for you. As to the suffering of indigenous people, it is my belief that we should become more focused on that and aware of celebrating life, but also remembering the genocide, the theft that took place that the Pilgrims inflicted upon indigenous people. I do indeed embrace and celebrate indigenous people, and the reason that they was changed to their mourning for indigenous people is because that day, the gist of that day, even though we know it's not true, but the gist of that day is Thanksgiving being held with the indigenous people of America, and both of them celebrated each other, which never took place. So I mourn with them, with indigenous people, as they mourn with us. I saw something on TV a little while ago, a celebration by indigenous people who, at one time, were forced into the school where they were forced to forget their language and their culture. If you spoke in your language, you were beaten. If you disobeyed a rule, you were chained to a post or chained to something in your room. So this type of suffering, this type of blatant racism should be remembered through a heart of mourning for those who had to endure it. The one who raised this question, I do indeed agree with our making sure that we be more cognizant of what we are celebrating. And I have a total distaste for 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas as well. And my distaste for 4th of July is because in New York, on the 4th of July, the late 1700s, I'll say, enslaved people were freed on the 4th of July. It took effect, rather, in New York. And when they celebrated it, they were murdered by Europeans occupying this country. And the reason they were murdered is because the Europeans said, the Caucasians said, that we were taking their day of independence, and they murdered us. After that, there were no more celebrations of freedom on the 4th of July. As a matter of fact, most people who were enslaved did not begin to celebrate the 4th of July until long after slavery, after that incident. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is take heart for these holidays. I long stopped celebrating Thanksgiving, and I'm asking you to be cognizant of what happened to the indigenous people during that period. When I was in college, during Thanksgiving period, we never celebrated Thanksgiving. We always fasted, and we made plans for what we were going to do for the remainder of the year and the next year in order to march toward freedom for us as a people. There's a lot that's involved in these holidays, even Martin Luther King Day. Arizona was the last state to embrace it. What happened with Martin Luther King? The government castigated him. The government hated him. The government did everything they could to destroy him. And then he was assassinated. And then the government gave a holiday to celebrate him. And then they rewrote the history in order to fit the holiday that they created. So all of these days are days that born in the womb of deception, in the womb of trauma, in the womb of murder. So let's just be cognizant of that in the future and move towards a more celebratory period of celebrating our families, celebrating each other, and celebrating the reality that we know who we are now. And as such, we embrace the parental obligations that we have. Questions or comments?
You know, along those lines, you brought up the 4th of July, and it reminded me of just that time period, and there are American flags everywhere, and in all the stores and everything. And I have like a really complicated response to the American flag. And I always feel something, when I drive by someone's house that's flying the flag. And it's different, I guess, if I know that it's a veteran family. I mean, I'm a member of a family with lots of folks that have served, and I guess I understand that, but I just have really complicated emotions around patriotism, and I'm not really sure what to do about that.
How do I deal with patriotism? I don't deal with patriotism as patriotism is defined. I deal with the reality that we built this country. This nation and everything in it, its inventions, its luxuries were born from the womb of the African and bore on the backs of the Africans. And I refuse to desire for everything that we have brought into existence to be destroyed. However, I do embrace the reality that everything that we have brought into existence has been taken away from us, and the day of reckoning has come. And that day of reckoning deals with the redistribution of wealth as well as the freedoms for all, inclusive of the enslaver. A freedom from the bondage of Christianity, the bondage of the celebrating the patriotism as it's defined, because when we do that, we are celebrating our bondage. And that's a non-starter as far as I am concerned. However, I would like to hear from some of you, others of you, who, how do you feel about this idea of patriotism? That's not rhetorical.
This is
Could it
Vermel.
be that?
I'm sorry.
Okay, I yield.
Go ahead.
I yield, Vermel.
I was just gonna say, I feel like Janice, having a father and brothers who have served this country, but I also feel in anger in the sense that we as a Black nation have given so much to this country, and yet they still have their foot on our necks or attempt to. And then there's the sadness I feel for them, realizing that they're holding their own self in bondage and they don't have any more freedom. They're just ignorant to the fact that they don't have this freedom. So I have kind of mixed feelings too about it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Could it be that the reason we're having a conversation today, and it started with what Ron brought up earlier about things that we didn't know about resurfacing, a resurrection, as you said, Pastor, in a sense, a recovery of the way things had been before. Could it be that this conversation is for us to repurpose the energy surrounding these quote unquote holidays? In other words, as you said, we don't sanction them, but since we're going to have them, to me, it's more like an opportunity when we're thinking and our motive is right about what it is we hope to accomplish. It's an opportunity to repurpose that energy from what it has been focused on to what it needs to be focused on. which is larger than what it was created for. So to me, it's just an opportunity to have more time to do that. And for me, what it means then is not as important to me. What it means to the larger community is not as important to me anymore. When I think about it that way, when I understand that it's a day that's set aside, but I don't have to focus on the community's reason for celebrating it, in a sense. And so the flags don't bother me. I mean, they're flags that the American flag hangs beside the Confederate flag, as you well know, on a lot of homes in the South. It doesn't bother me as much anymore, because for me, I repurpose that energy, in a sense. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you,
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Bob.
This is Ron. I agree with Bob. I look at this, and I have to admit that it did at one time bother me as well. And I choose to look at it from a different perspective as well. I listened to what Pastor said to us on Monday night, and I can't repeat any of that. I was going to ask him to recap. But as the African, there are two sides to that. The one side is the responsibility that we have, and the other side is recognizing who you are and embracing that. The looking at that, the embracing of it, and recognizing that this book is not only for you, it's about you. That tells me there is no such thing as anything being external to the African. Everything is an intuitive thing for you to digest and turn into light. So with every discussion, whether it be talking about the holidays and the flag, whether it be talking about the journey of Abraham, it comes from the same place. It comes from the place of desire and truth, and repurposing energy and bringing wellness and healing to the land. So from that's how I have to see it, to be whole, to be healed, to not let these things unravel me or divide my integrity. Because you guys on this line have convinced me that I am much greater than any one little thing that happens or any speck of darkness that man wants to throw at us and try to bring fear or control to us. So I see these conversations as being a necessity as much as understanding that I am Elohim, as much as understanding that Jesus spoke Aramaic and what all of that means. All those points of enlightenment brings us closer to seeing who we are and helping us on that what am I trying to say? That assignment that we have to bring in love and kindness and forgiveness into the world. So that is not a part of the question is appreciated because it was necessary, but it is not a part or separated from anything else that we are to do. And I just back to the same place. I agree with Barbara. We repurpose it. We don't look at it in a high place or a low place. It is what it is, and we do what we do, and that sets things in order. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let me thank the one who texted a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello? Oh, yes. I was going to respond before you wrap things up, if that's what you're about to do. You asked if there are any comments
Okay, go
or
ahead.
questions. I too have struggled about I guess this notion in the past, and I agree, concur with everything that has been said. Um, in terms of repurposing it and not actually celebrating, um, I guess what others may be celebrating, or as it relates to some of the origins. A few years ago, here in New York, before I guess going through it with some of the normal things that happen in the day, which is spending time with friends and family, and of course eating and things of that nature. I went to the National Museum of the American Indians, excuse me, one being here in New York and the other from the Smithsonian being in D.C. And of course, it's open on that day, open on all days with the exception of the December 25th. And it was more so of that, I guess, recognition and definitely trying, I guess, going there in a very meditative state and being present the entire time in the museum as far as my intention and my heart and reconciling that situation, or even acknowledging all that had occurred in terms of the massacre and genocide, etc. And in a sense, making myself one with them in that acknowledgement and recognition, and being one with. And it was only then that I felt comfortable in going through, the rest of the day. But even in that, in terms of Ms. Barbara was talking about repurposing it, I took that energy along with me. I passed it, on, etc. And so now, though I do participate in things on that day, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a normal Thanksgiving, but there is, joy and love and peace shared amongst friends, family, and loved ones. So that's kind of like how I dealt with the situation. But I definitely can also relate to what Janice said in regards to patriotism as well.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
This is Rania. I was fortunate enough to come home this Thanksgiving, and the thing that I noticed about it was that we spent a lot of time talking about the ancestors, and also talking about ourselves. The kids my generation talked about health issues that we see that have come up in our relatives, and that we see in ourselves or our children. And so it was nice to be able to have those kinds of discussions too. And it wasn't tied up in the whole Christmas gift giving thing. It was just about sharing experiences together, and reconnecting in ways that we haven't, especially for the adults who've moved away, as opposed to the ones who still live close to home. So I thought that was, I've been wanting to come for Thanksgiving for a while, such a short time, but since its focus isn't on, where Christmas is always about all this other stuff, that one really becomes a focus on spending time with and reconnecting to family. And that was what I noticed with this holiday. I mean, we talked a little bit about even our lineages. One of my cousins asked one of my uncles, "What are you? What is your what is your background?" And so it's just interesting to have those discussions, to really think about who are we, what are we, what does it mean to be part of this family, what parts of this family do we share with each other, and that sort of thing. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? As I started before, I want to thank the person who texted that question because it opens up a tremendous amount of understanding and recognition for us. Keep in mind that the two institutions of bondage are the ones who endorse holidays. That is the church and state. If you read the history of Catholicism / Christianity, you will find that regardless of what your celebration was about, when they was in the midst of their Inquisition, they would incorporate it into Christianity. And it did not matter whether it was what they considered demonic in nature. It just didn't matter. They incorporated it in order to pull the people in to Christianity. It's a draw. The things that are celebrated draws people into Christianity or brings it closer to the state, which is says that we were defended with our lives. The Stars and Stripes are a reminder of genocide. It's nothing else. The Confederate flag is a reminder of enslavement. That's awesome. The stars represent the states that were established by the authority of the oppressors. The states represent an authority that actually committed genocide in order to colonize a large body of land. And the stars is a reminder of the 13 colonies. The stripes are the colonies that were brought into being as a result and became a reminder to Native Americans and to us of what price people of color has had to pay in order for the oppressor, for the European, to have his way in the land. So I think that remembering what these things represent, these symbols represent, I think is important. The nation flag comes pretty much from the flags of Christianity. And these flags are symbols that say, I own you. These are symbols that says, I have authority over you regardless of what you think. And that is the reason the British flag, the American flag, the flags of France and Germany were placed in so many different lands across the world. So I do think that this discussion has brought us to a place in understanding that it is very necessary for us, as Barbara mentioned earlier, to usurp the energy that goes into these celebrations and use that energy for a greater purpose. And that is the purpose of not only mourning what took place, but at the same time building on what has taken place, building on the mourning. The ancestors who we mourn are the ones who guide us on this journey of redemption and freedom. And this redemption and freedom is also offered to those who were and still are the oppressors of this earth. Are there any questions or comments about that? If not, I would like to acquiesce to what Ron asked about doing an overview of Monday. Questions or comments? Thank all of you guys.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Pastor. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say thank all of you guys for your for the question and responses to this question. That's all.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask the same thing. Were there any questions, comments, and make sure that it's clear? Anybody else have any different thoughts about it? If not, then please continue. Yeah, I thought we had a very spiritual lesson Monday night, and as they all are, of course, but this one was different in a way. And I was hoping that Pastor could kind of go back into that, kind of do a recap or a summary of it and see if there are any questions or comments, especially for those who have had chances to kind of sit on it for a little while. Pastor, please. Thank you.
The efforts that were made on Monday came from a different space. And those efforts were to help us to understand that we are not teaching voodoo, not because it's bad. We're not teaching voodoo because we were given something else. Voodoo is spiritual, and voodoo speaks to the spirituality of a group of people who practice it. The bad name that it has received came from the mouth of oppressors and murderers. So we should not in any way condemn that which we don't understand. And voodoo is one of those things. What we are teaching is not Christianity. Because unlike voodoo, Christianity is a method of enslavement, a method of bondage, a method of perpetuating capitalism without regard to who it hurts. What we were given was the Bible, the Scriptures. We were given the Scriptures as a nation being born on the waters in transit from Africa. We were given these Scriptures when we were brought to this land. The reason we were given these Scriptures is because they tell us about who we are and how we are to embrace even those who have committed so many atrocities against us. It tells the book tells us or gives us an image of the life that is intended for humanity. Christianity was allowed by our Creator because it kept the book available until such time as this. If the oppressor knew what was really in the Scriptures, the oppressor would have destroyed them, and we would have no indication as to what they are saying. So the very thing that was used to enslave us and keep us submissive to enslavement was designed for the freedom of humanity. It is my contention, and this is not said without some research, it is my contention that the only people who are able to understand the scriptures are the people from that nation that was born during the transatlantic slave trade. When we look at other labeled spiritual beliefs, and what I mean by that is Buddhism, Hinduism, all these labels came from the oppressors. When we look at these spiritual beliefs, we see that all of them come from the same place, and all of them are about the same thing, and that is loving kindness and a desire for humanity to live as one. The scriptures that were given to us are there for us to use as a tool of bringing humanity under the covering of righteousness, without regard to who it is or their journey to the divine. Whether it's Hinduism or whether it's Voodoo or whether it's Islam, in the purest states or at their original in the inception, let me say that, in the inception of these beliefs, we find that every one of them are designed to reveal a pathway to our Creator. And the revelation of that pathway begins to show us that we were brought into this earth in order to be the image and likeness of Elohim. And Christianity tells us we can't be Elohim, even though the scripture says that we are. I say that ye are gods. I say that you are Elohim. And Jesus said that is it not written that I say that ye are gods? He said this in response to the scribes saying that he presented himself as being Elohim. So I guess in essence what I'm trying to say to you, no, I'm not trying. What I'm saying to you is knowing that we are Elohim comes with great responsibility and parental obligation. And that obligation is to bring humanity under the umbrella, which means that the oppressors are to be brought to a place of righteousness as well. If we are indeed the Creator as the Creator that created us, if we are that image and likeness, then it is our obligation to create others in the image and likeness of Elohim, in image and likeness of us. When we bring balance to this earth, when we bring a sense of unicity to this earth, it is at that point that we would have reached the place where we are truly Elohim, because we would have created in our image and likeness. And there are those who have issues with that. I'm concerned about that if you have questions about it. However, my desire is that you don't just disagree or dismiss it simply because it's something that you've not heard before or because it causes you issues, makes you uncomfortable. The idea of the browning of America has nothing to do with race. It has more to do with spirituality. It is a known fact that the African is the most spiritual person in the earth, and the African was brought to this country and given a status below that of animals. And there are those who still represent that attitude. So when we talk about the Brown of America, the anger about that is basically who wants to be black or who wants to be a person of color. The discomfort with that actually reveals your true feelings about yourself. So that's pretty much what we talked about on Monday night, and I know that I probably missed quite a bit. However, I'm very much aware that the Creator allows this to be placed in the macro for the purpose of a babe rising from his bed, speaking to what we are talking about without knowing what we are talking about. This is, to me, is a spoken word that grants us the understanding that we are on the right journey or the right pathway. Questions or comments? Ron, is that it in terms of an overview?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's questions or comments, guys? Anyone? Well, let me ask you one, Pastor. Let's look at us. Let's look at the people on this phone, I guess, and our obligation as far as what you said and how we fit, what we do with this information. We did a lesson a while back on the 10th of tithe and what the tithe meant and the power of that representing to people. Talk to us that we hopefully see ourselves in what you said and feel empowered to be the people in recognition of what you have described to us and what these words, these scriptures mean that have been written for us. Kind of tie that together for me, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, you're there.
I'm sorry. The tithe was appropriated by the Creator, and it was allotted to the priests, the tribe of the Levites. The priests who had the primary responsibility of bringing spiritual understanding to the people by way of introducing them to who they are. There are those who have written that since there is no temple, then the tithe is obsolete, which doesn't make sense to me at all. But anyway, that's the manifestation of what the tithe is in terms of supporting the spiritual God in the earth. The spiritual manifestation, the spiritual tithe also is the spiritual teachers in the earth, the gods in the earth, the priests who are in the earth. And what I mean by that is the tithe was to benefit the priest in terms of giving the priest the opportunity to support himself or itself, supporting itself in this physical material world, while at the same time, the tithe of spirituality was for the priest to guide the people spiritually. That is a representation. I'm sorry, the physical tithe is a representation of that tithe of spirituality. I see the nation that was birthed on is en route to this country. I see the that as being a tithe of our humanity, meaning that this obligation is based upon the obligation of tithing physically, and this is the obligation of the tithe spiritually. If we are to be open to spirituality and bringing humanity to a place of balance, we must embrace the reality of what is. And the reality of what is that no one on earth is more familiar with being in the crucible of Egypt than we are as a people. And out of the people comes the spiritual God who brings spirituality to a place of understanding, which gives us a mirror so we can see who we are beyond who we were told that we are. As a matter of truth, if you don't know who you are, then you will not embrace the reality of the spiritual guides that have been rendered to serve humanity. Knowing who you are does not start with knowing that you're Elohim. Knowing who you are begins with embracing your origin, knowing that your origin is Africa, or your origin is Europe, or your origin is Japan. Embracing your origin. And when you embrace your origin, you must also be true to your cultural roots and how those of your origin related to humanity. Embracing the reality of that begins to open our eye that guides us along the journey to bringing unicity to humanity. Denial of our cultural origins keeps us blind to what the truth is. For example, there are those who embrace that we are Africans, and they make attempts to embrace the spiritual beliefs of Africans in terms of voodoo and the other labeled religions in Africa and in other places. And what happens is they lose sight of who they are, because what they have done, they have purposely discounted the power that is inherent in understanding the scriptures. They are dismissive of those who look at the Bible as being a book of spirituality. They see it only through the eyes of the oppressor, and that is the reason they return and they begin to search for spiritual beliefs that are on the continent of Africa. And when that happens, they never know who they are. They never see that they are Elohim, because they have passed up the opportunity to see that. And they have actually cut themselves off from a large swath of people who are human as well. They've cut themselves off from Caucasians, only searching for what will enhance their growth, not understanding that none of us grow without embracing each other. Forgiveness is one of the most difficult things for people like that to extend, not realizing that it's the weak man who does not forgive. It takes strength to forgive. So when we look at this from this perspective, we are able to embrace the teachings of Jesus as opposed to the teachings of Christianity, because the Christianity is not synonymous with the Scripture at all. And one of the examples I would like to leave with you is this. The word homosexual did not enter the Bible, did not enter the Scriptures until 1946. And that was doing a translation from the Greek to the English. And that mistranslation of one word is what has created people who say that Christianity, that homosexuality is an abomination to God, and Christianity has no right to embrace it, which leads people like this preacher who said that he felt no remorse, he felt no compassion for those, as he put it, homos who were killed in Colorado. That if that's Christianity, I want no parts of it. However, that is the Christianity that we were taught, and that's the Christianity that we practice to this day. So I leave you with that. And unless there are questions or comments about what has been said. Ron?
Questions or comments, guys?
I believe that, as you say, it's a must that we embrace our cultural first, because it was something you said earlier, that we have to start with where we are in the physical before and that's what we do. We have the physical before we begin the spiritual quest, this knowing who we are above and beyond the physical. And my thought slipped away, but hold a second, I'm catching it. Or it's apprehending me. But once we know who we are, it's in knowing culturally who we are that then we can see the larger picture of other cultures and begin to see those threads of commonality. If we look at it only from our own narrow perspective and define things only from what we see, we are never able to see the one and many spiritual concepts, the one and many spiritual truths. And that's, I think that's why we have all of these different cultures, because it seems like we're splintered. And it's I guess symbolic of that, the oneness of the Adam becoming two and becoming more than two and becoming nations, covering the whole world. It's in knowing then that I embrace my culture, but understanding that my culture is different from another culture, but there is a similarity, and I believe we've got to do that, because this concept of Christian nationalism that people are talking about now seeks to solidify these abominable untruths about Christianity that permeate all of these churches. So we have to have this discussion and this conversation because we cannot have that negative, dangerous, dark concept be crystallized and concretized at another level politically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I was just gonna say thank you, and she just reiterating the knowing who you are, embracing that, and coming to it. That is the importance of that, the origin of who we are. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking out loud.
Well,
Does this make sense? Yeah.
You know, what just came to mind is our Creator kept us alive for a reason, allowed us to multiply in the face of genocide and label that led to death for a reason. All over the world, regardless of where you are, whether it's Japan or China, Scandinavian countries, it doesn't matter. The African is seen as the least among humanity. We are always the minds of other people. We are always the bottom of the totem pole. But that's for a reason. It's the bottom of the totem pole that has the strength to hold everybody else up. It is projection when we are treated less than human and thought to be less than human by all races on this earth except our own, and sometimes our own included. That's called projection. The reason the Japanese, the Chinese, etc., see us in that manner is because of indoctrination by Christianity and white people. And when we see that taking place, we should not be dismayed. We should rejoice because the only reason someone projects to you is because they are what they are projecting. It is incumbent upon us to embrace that reality in order for us to carry out the teachings of Jesus, to become the teachings of Jesus, to understand the reason that the book was written in the Hebrew and Aramaic. Also, I want you to keep this in mind as well. Those who profess to be the quote-unquote true Jews occupying Israel, they don't speak Hebrew. They speak Yiddish. And that in itself should tell you something. And Yiddish is not akin to Hebrew or Aramaic. As a matter of truth, there are words in the Aramaic and the Hebrew that don't exist in Yiddish. So even with those who have occupied lands that do not belong to them under the guise of being Jews, which is non-existent in the scriptures. These people must be embraced as well, no differently than we embrace everyone else, because they too have lost their way, and they too see the value in the African and his spiritual beliefs, and have sought to manipulate it to be what they want it to be as well. Not forgetting that this nation called Israel did not come into existence until 1949 at the behest of European countries, because they did not want the they did not want those who practice what they call Judaism in this country, period. And that is being seen through the mindset of Christian nationalists, as well as the Trump and MAGA folks. None of these Jewish organizations said anything about the dinner that Trump had with the Holocaust deniers. Yet they sought rather to put Kyrie Irving in his place, because he had the audacity to retweet a movie with no comments from him at all. From the mouth of white nationalists, Christian nationalists, comes all kind of defamation towards the Jews, but they don't say anything about it until it's us. Why? Why is it that the politicians can do it and we have said nothing and we can't? If you mention something that someone else said about a Jew and you are a person of color, you get castigated. You get branded as being anti-Semitic. That in itself is racism, undeniable racism. And we have to be cognizant of that as well. Don't buy into everything you hear. If it does not fit the scriptures, if it does not comply with the principles of the kingdom, leave it alone, because it's not for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Questions or comments, anyone? Where are we? Does this make sense?
Pastor.
I'm sorry,
Pastor.
Go ahead.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I've been trying to say something the whole time, so I had to switch up and find something up to work. My question is, every February, they always bring out roots when we're trying to celebrate the month of February. Now, what make roots so genocide to us? Because a lot of black people have money, but they still treat them as the moving like roots.
I got you.
And okay, what make roots different than the Wakanda movie?
Okay, first of all, roots is a two-edged sword. Let me say this before you guys go. I need to tell you. I need to tell you something. Okay. So when we end this, please stay on for a few seconds. Back to your question, Charles. Roots is a double-edged sword. Roots gives us a sense of where we came from in this country. But roots does not give us a in-depth sense of who we were before we were brought here. Roots follows the trend of Black History Week a month. When we were growing up, it was a day, then it went to a week, now it's a month. Black History, a day or week, did not go beyond the contributions of previously enslaved people in this country. It did not go beyond these borders. When you see other indigenous people speaking about their culture in this nation, they are able to go to the roots of their nation, their group. They're able to go to, and they're able to connect to a nation. We are not. We are not able to do that because the roots that we had in Africa have been dug up and burned for the mere purpose of bringing us into this place for the purpose of redemption, redeeming it, redeeming humanity. We are a type of Melchizedek. We don't know where we came from, other than the continent, of course, but then that's where all humans came from. We don't know the language we spoke, other than the language we now speak. So we are now beginning to see the bridge between Africa and Africans in this nation. We are beginning to see that bridge through the eyes of Jesus. And that bridge is showing us our spiritual nature. And that spiritual nature supersedes any physical nature, any physical nation. If we only see a physical nation, then we don't have a nation state. And we were refused the right to become a plebiscite in this nation. So at best, and I hope you can take this in the right way, we exist spiritually more so than physically in this country. Our existence is more spiritual than physical. Because we are embracing that, we are beginning to see how materialism is more of a bondage than it is a source of comfort. Because when it becomes a source of comfort, it begins to put others in bondage for our comfort. So I guess the bottom line to your question, Charles, is that we go beyond roots, but roots was good for its time period. And now, so a lot of white people don't understand it. Wakanda is our spiritual message. Even though it was written in conjunction with Caucasians, it is our message. It is the other side of the message of roots. It speaks to a highly developed intellectual group of people who are able to produce and manufacture material things that will benefit the world as opposed to a certain group of people who desire to worship money as opposed to be a part of humanity. I hope that helps you, Charles. And the rest of you, of course. But does that address your question, Charles?
Yes, sir. It addressed it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the question.
Thank you for taking the time to answer it.
You're welcome.
Hey, this is Barbara. As you talked about the fact that we don't have a national Black language, national culture, et cetera, because we were ripped by the roots, up by the roots from our various countries of origin on the continent of Africa. It's like we epitomize, we represent that many and one concept. When the Creator created, He started with the one and the many, and we as the many have to then understand we are the one. That's what the African race, that's what the African people here represent. They represent. We became one spiritually from the many in the womb of, as you say, the slave ships that brought us over on the water. We became the spiritual nation because now we are the only people, as you say, who can't claim where our root is. And so I guess I'm reinforcing the fact of what you talked about, that the Black people are representative of that spiritual reunification of the one, of the many and one concept, if that makes any sense. Instead, we've been talking about the one and many concept. Well, we are the many and the one concept, showing what spiritually reconnection can really do, the power that it has.
I see that. I can see that. And we became one yet many. Yes, we became the nation that was brought into existence on the waters, which means that based upon what Elohim states, that's where we became, that's where our awareness, who we were truly created to be, started. And now tested for such a time as this, because it is time for it to take place. 10 years. 10 years since we talked about the Mayan concept of how mankind would end if no one picked up the mantle and brought harmony to this earth. So here we are. Here we are. We are Jonah. And we have been in the belly of the whale. And now we have been spewed out into a consciousness that has brought us to this place of our journey, being our purpose for being in this earth, our purpose for having been enslaved, our purpose for having been rebirthed. All of this, all of it is above and beyond all the vitriolic statements and attitudes that has been espoused towards us. In the end, we are the vanguard for humanity. And again, I know absolutely no one who sees what's in the scripture as we are seeing it. Everyone is taking it literally as opposed to allegorically. And when you see who you are, you have a peace that is beyond any agitation that could possibly snatch that peace away from you or cause you to abandon it. Is it not a beautiful thing when we look retrospectively and see when we embrace who we truly are? The burdens became lighter. The rat race is non-existent. We are at peace because when we found out who we are, we found our peace as well. And if you cannot find peace within, there is no other place for you to find it. When you find peace within, you become peace and peaceful with all. I'm done.
I like that. Thank you. Beautiful lesson. Questions or comments? Anyone? Does this make sense? I take that as a yes. Okay. Pastor, you had something you want to tell us before we close?
Yes, I do. I want everyone to know that yesterday, ST's mom transitioned. And I felt like this would be the best way to convey that to all of you. And my desire is that the peace that he has found in this earth will remain or keep him in a peaceful place, even though the pain is there. Of course, the sadness is, and so are the tears. Our peace, our strength, must become his strength, even more so than it has been. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so it is.
Yeah. Well, I hope we gained that from this, and we will convene again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Hope you guys have a good day, and remember ST, okay? Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.